My guardians insisted I forgive my sibling for deceiving me with my former spouse, then demanded I financially support them and his new household. My partner, Bella, 27 female, cheated on me with my brother, Ethan, 27 male, which is why I, 35 male, recently got divorced. My family did choose them over me, and yes, that did happen, but fate had other plans. To help you understand how my entire life led to this dreadful betrayal, let me start from the beginning. Ethan, who was born when I was 9 years old, was always the favored child while I was growing up in suburban Chicago. In the eyes of our parents, Mark, 60, male, and Lisa, 58, female, I seemed to fade away. Although they weren't particularly cruel, I was undoubtedly treated as an afterthought. This reality was reinforced throughout our upbringing. I can still vividly remember winning my first art competition in 7th grade. I dedicated months to creating a detailed model of a sustainable city, complete with energy-efficient designs and green spaces. I received first place and a special commendation for creativity from the judges. Ethan had a soccer practice and not even a game zone. My parents didn't attend the ceremony at all. The walls of our living room were adorned with Ethan's participation trophies, while my award sat unopened on the shelf for a week before disappearing into the attic. Our entire childhood was shaped by that. Ethan's average grades were celebrated, but my straight A's were met with distracted nods. My mother first expressed concern that Ethan might feel inadequate due to my enrollment in the honors program. Ethan received a new bike for his 16th birthday to help boost his confidence, according to Dad, while I had to start working part-time at 16 to save for college and buy my own clothes. Graduating from high school was incredibly challenging. Instead of witnessing my graduation and giving my valedictorian speech, my parents spent most of the ceremony photographing Ethan playing in the stands when he was just 11 years old. Ethan was complaining about being bored, so they didn't hear me announce my scholarship to Stanford. A celebration dinner for Ethan's early soccer season turned into a party because Ethan seemed a little down about all my achievements. Mom even encouraged me to tone down my college plans. I barely noticed that I had been accepted to Stanford on a partial scholarship because Ethan had just made the junior soccer team. "That's nice, honey, but did you hear Ethan might be the starting forward next season?" Mom said. I realized that nothing I ever did would be enough. At that point, I served as the practice child, the test subject for Ethan, their real parenting project. With my scholarship, the money I saved from 3 part-time jobs, and the determination to never look back, I set out for Stanford at 18. Ethan had a summer league game the day I moved into my dorm, so my parents left early. They didn't even help me unpack. Those were transformative college years. For the first time, I was evaluated solely on my own merits. Upon discovering my talent for software development, I immersed myself in computer science and graduated with honors. Several tech companies were interested in my thesis on cloud computing optimization, and by the time I graduated, I had received 5 job offers. Part of me still hoped things might improve, so I chose a promising company in Chicago, partly because it was close to home. Within 2 years, I was leading my own development team, and by my 5th year, I was the youngest senior developer in the company's history. My parents were too busy helping Ethan with his 3rd college major change to really understand what I did for a living. 3 years ago, at a small cafe near my office, the real turning point in my life occurred. Bella and I met there while she was finishing her degree in education. She worked as a barista and somehow remembered each regular's order and a personal detail about them. She admitted she had been writing encouraging notes on my coffee cups for weeks before she finally agreed to go out with me. I hadn't even noticed because I was so focused on my work. We spent 6 hours on our first date, discussing everything from our families to our dreams. She seemed to genuinely understand my family's issues. When I shared my childhood experiences, she replied, "They're blind. They have no idea what they're missing." I felt seen for the first time. The following year felt surreal. We cooked elaborate meals together, spent weekends exploring Chicago's hidden bookstores, and hiked in the nearby forests. She encouraged me to pursue a significant promotion at work, helped me prepare for interviews, and celebrated my success more than anyone else. She shed joyful tears when I asked her to marry me after 15 months, saying she had been hoping I would. At the time, I thought our wedding was small and perfect. When my family arrived, they talked about Ethan's new job opportunity in New York throughout the reception, even showing everyone a text message from Ethan regarding his 2nd interview. My mom even interrupted Bella's father's toast. In hindsight, I should have recognized it as a warning sign, but Bella laughed it off. saying she thought their commitment to Ethan was sweet. Our marriage was everything I had dreamed of for 3 years. We began discussing starting a family, bought a lovely apartment in the city, and traveled whenever we could. Bella made our home feel warm and inviting, decorating it with photos from our adventures and creating a small herb garden on our balcony. We were a team. She often said we were against the world. Then Ethan reached out last year after struggling to find his footing in New York. He sent me a long email expressing his desire to reconnect and mend our relationship, claiming that family should stick together. After a week of contemplation, Bella encouraged me to give him a chance. People change, she said. Maybe he's learned from his mistakes. I reluctantly agreed to dinner with Ethan, and although it was awkward, the first meeting showed promise. He seemed to have matured and acknowledged his past mistakes. A week later, I introduced him to Bella, and they hit it off immediate, perhaps too well, as I would later discover. Everything seemed perfect at first. A couple of times a week, Ethan would come over for dinner, genuinely interested in my work, bringing wine and sharing stories about his life in New York. He even defended me when our parents began showing their usual favoritism at family dinners. I started to think that we might finally be brothers again. However, things began to shift subtly. Ethan started visiting our home unexpectedly while I was still at work, spending time with Bella as she graded papers. She insisted they were just hanging out and that it was nice for her to have company. He would stay for dinner, using my favorite mug while chatting with her and making inside jokes. I chose to ignore the warning signs, including their sudden silence when I entered a room, Bella's phone quickly turning away when I sat next to her, and their knowing glances at dinner. The announcement of the pregnancy followed. We were having dinner at home, and of course Ethan was there when Bella shared the news. While I was overjoyed, Ethan's reaction should have raised alarms. He smiled knowingly, a look of satisfaction that made my stomach churn. From that moment on, he was always around, talking about how involved he would be in our child's life, touching Bella's belly without asking, and making comments about the baby's future. Despite my attempts to plan a romantic baby moon, he invited himself, saying the baby needed both of us, and Bella agreed. I still remember the night I discovered the truth. I had been lying awake, replaying months of suspicious events. Bella's phone was charging on the nightstand while she slept peacefully beside me. I had never looked at her phone in our 6 years together, believing in trust and privacy, but I felt an overwhelming need to know. What I found shattered my world. They had been exchanging messages for months, planning their future together, discussing the baby, and even having secret meetings. It became clear that their affair had started long before Ethan returned to my life. They had intended to tell me after the baby was born, assuming I would be too attached to leave. The pregnancy was no accident. As I read through their messages until dawn, I sat in our reading chair, Bella's phone in hand. When she woke up, she immediately knew what I had found. She cried, saying they hadn't meant for it to happen, that Ethan and she just clicked, and that he understood her better than I ever could. She even used the most cliched excuse in the history of affairs. We were going to tell you, but we didn't want to worry you. The next morning, I called my parents, hoping for support. I was shocked by their response. My mom said Ethan made a mistake, but he was going to be a father now, and I needed to forgive him and be the bigger person. They wanted me to consider the baby, the grandchild born from the affair between their younger son and my wife. They were protecting him once again. That day, I called a divorce attorney and checked into a hotel. Bella alternated between pleading for my forgiveness and blaming me for abandoning our family. At work, Ethan tried to corner me, claiming we needed to have a man-to-man talk. I reported him for harassment and had security escort him out. Going through the divorce was a nightmare. Bella and Ethan claimed their affair started because I was emotionally unavailable, painting me as domineering and abusive. My parents testified against me, saying I had always been difficult and jealous of Ethan. My mom even blamed the mediator for the entire situation, insisting I should have been more considerate of Ethan's needs. After that, I stopped negotiating. In court, Bella managed to secure a decent settlement. It seems that in Illinois, having an affair with your husband's brother does not waive alimony. Small victories, like keeping the apartment and most of my income, felt hollow. Now, at 35 years old, I am divorced and completely estranged from my family. I've changed my email, blocked their numbers, and instructed building security to deny them entry. On certain days, I find myself questioning if there was any way I could have avoided this if I had been a better husband, brother, or son. However, I eventually realized that I wasn't the one who deceived everyone. Turning family against family was not my doing. They say that everyone eventually faces karma. I am not sure if that's true, but I do know that I am tired of being the family scapegoat, expected to be understanding while everyone else gets away with ruining lives. I've lived my entire life as the one who was overlooked, the second choice and the afterthought. No more. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they took a bizarre turn. Update 1. I assumed my family would finally leave me alone after I cut off communication post-divorce. About a month had passed since everything unfolded, and I was focusing on healing and moving forward. However, it seemed they had other plans. Yesterday morning, while I was in an important meeting with my development team, our office receptionist messaged me, saying my mother, Lisa, was in the lobby and insisted on seeing me. She reportedly spent over an hour there, telling everyone she just needed to talk to her son. Since my team had witnessed Ethan's previous incident at work, they could tell how uneasy I was. After ignoring her and continuing with my work, my phone began ringing with calls from unknown numbers. It appeared my mother had enlisted several family members to try to reach me. I thought it might be work-related when I finally answered one call, but it was my aunt, Karen, 55, female, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. Without even saying hello, she began, "Ethan and Bella are really struggling. Ethan still hasn't found a job, and the settlement money is running low. Well, no one wants to hire him after that. Ethan's reputation seems to have taken a hit due to his affair with Bella, which somehow made its way into his professional network. After background checks, several potential employers withdrew their offers. I couldn't help but notice the irony. For once, his actions had real consequences. This is where it gets ridiculous. In addition to buying groceries and paying their rent, my parents have also been covering Bella's prenatal medical expenses. My father's retirement funds are dwindling, and they are now panicking as they run out of money themselves. Their solution? They want me to provide financial support for the woman who betrayed me and the brother who destroyed my marriage. My mother didn't just show up at my office, she had a plan. She chose to ambush me at work, knowing I wouldn't return their calls. After threatening to stay until closing time, she launched into a prepared speech about forgiveness and family responsibilities. When I finally made my way down to the lobby to address the situation, she conveniently forgot that I had to pay for my own college education when she remarked, "Your father and I have always provided for both our sons. It's time for you to step up and support your brother during this tough time." What I was hearing was unbelievable. A tough time? My wife became pregnant after he had an affair with her, and he tried to claim the child as his own. That is a series of deliberate choices, not a rough patch. She foolishly responded, "Well, if you had paid more attention to Bella's needs." Before she could finish, I called security and urged her to leave. I loudly announced in the lobby that I was leaving my brother and his unborn child behind. Despite their support, several of my coworkers found this humiliating. Later that evening, Ethan sent me an email to bypass my blocks, filled with half-hearted apologies and thinly veiled requests for financial help. He wrote about the struggles Bella was facing during her pregnancy, something I was unaware of, and how they couldn't afford proper medical care, claiming the stress was affecting my future niece or nephew. The attachmenta sonogram image was what truly caught my attention. Even though the manipulation was clear, they were trying to emotionally blackmail me with their unborn child. The following day, my father showed up at my apartment complex, pretending to be there just to talk. I declined to let him in when the front desk called. For 2 hours, he stood in the lobby, telling everyone who would listen how his successful son was causing his brother's family to suffer. Since then, I've had to inform the management of my building about the situation and ask them to bar any of my family members from entering. I see no other choice, even though it's awkward to publicly discuss my private issues this way. Additionally, the harassment has spread to social media. On Facebook, Bella has been making vague accusations against me, claiming that she was abandoned during her pregnancy by her emotionally unavailable husband, while Ethan has added his own comments about how some people need to take responsibility. He seems oblivious to the irony of discussing responsibility while pleading for handouts. I find it infuriating how they have twisted this narrative, portraying me as the villain for not providing for those who deceived me. They seem to believe I have a duty to rescue them from their own mess simply because I am doing well professionally. I've started keeping a record of everything, including emails, workplace incidents, and social media posts. According to my lawyer, if they try anything legal, we might need it. She is particularly concerned they might attempt to use the legal system to extract more support. The worst part has been receiving messages from certain family friends and distant relatives, encouraging me to put family first and be the bigger person. They don't seem to realize that Ethan and Bella have ruined my last remnants of a family. Even though I am resolute in my decision not to assist them, the constant harassment is wearing me down. To cope with all of this, I've been seeing a therapist and considering searching for a new job in a different city. Although I don't like the idea of running away, I am at a loss for what to do to find peace. My own family has sunk to a level I never imagined, but here we are. They are not merely asking for help, they are trying to intimidate and coerce me into giving money to the same individuals who destroyed my life. I have a feeling this isn't over yet. Desperate people do desperate things, and they are growing increasingly desperate. Update 2. Suddenly, my former partner's attorney sent me a notice. Ethan and Bella were trying to sue me for additional support, citing increased medical needs and changed circumstances. My lawyer, who had been documenting all their harassment incidents, was furious but prepared. Last week was the scheduled court date, and it felt surreal to enter that courtroom. Bella was dressed to emphasize her obvious pregnancy. Our parents sat smugly behind them, and Ethan was in our father's old suit, looking uncomfortable. First up was their lawyer, who told a story that almost made me laugh. They claimed that because they had underestimated the emotional toll of the divorce, the initial payment was insufficient. They even suggested that my alleged pattern of workplace harassment had prevented Ethan from finding a job and implied that my behavior was jeopardizing Bella's pregnancy due to stress. My lawyer's response was heartbreaking. She started by playing surveillance footage from my office building, which included my mother's dramatic displays, Ethan's aggressive behavior, and Bella's attempts to sneak in through the back door. She then presented social media evidence, including a detailed timeline of their online abuse. The financial records were the real shocker. Ethan had turned down multiple job offers, claiming they were beneath him, not because he was struggling to find work due to my supposed harassment. Bella had rejected a full-time teaching position to maintain her status as a jobless pregnant woman. Her prenatal records showed a perfectly healthy pregnancy with typical expenses, which was the most damning evidence of all. They had been using their unborn child as a pawn in their game against me. The judge was clearly upset. He interrupted their attorney when he tried to argue that emotional distress warranted more support. "Your clients seem to have committed perjury, counselor. Do you want to continue down this path?" After a brief recess, their lawyer returned looking defeated. Ethan was pale, Bella was crying, and their united front had crumbled. I was pleasantly surprised by the judge's decision. In addition to rejecting their motion, he also reduced my alimony payments by 60%. "Parties who misuse the legal system are not viewed favorably by this court," he stated. "Mr. Smith appears to be the victim of a well-orchestrated scheme to exploit him financially and emotionally." The fallout was swift. Bella decided she could work after all, and Ethan unexpectedly landed a retail job. In their final message, my parents accused me of ruining Ethan's last chance and assured me they would never forgive me for abandoning my family, citing irreconcilable differences regarding honesty. Their attorney resigned from representing them, and my company increased security, barring them from the property. I learned that my parents had taken out a second mortgage to cover legal fees and that Ethan and Bella were constantly arguing about money. Finally, I feel like I can breathe. I can rebuild my savings thanks to the reduced expenses, and I am considering accepting a job offer in Seattle. Letting someone face the consequences of their actions is sometimes the best form of revenge. However, I suspect this story is far from over. Update 3. I want to start by thanking this community. I have remained strong throughout this entire ordeal thanks to your support and comments. Here is what may be my story's final update. Aunt Karen, my father's sister, unexpectedly reached out to me a few weeks after the court victory. I was curious enough to listen because she has never been involved in family disputes. Trying to sound concerned, she began, "Your father isn't getting any younger. His health is suffering because of all this stress." She continued by discussing how my parents would lose their retirement savings, how they had to refinance their home to cover Ethan and Bella's expenses, and how families should stick together no matter what. When I didn't immediately respond with sympathy, she changed her approach. "Did you know your mother cries herself to sleep every night? Even though they may have acted wrongly towards you as a child, they are still your parents. Ethan is still your brother despite everything that has happened." I cut her off. "What are you referring to?" The months he spent sleeping with my wife, getting her pregnant, and then trying to claim the child as his own? That's what happened. I was astounded by her response. Well, perhaps you could have been more involved in your marriage, she suggested, attempting to shift the blame onto me, claiming my jealousy of Ethan as a child created a toxic environment that pushed them together. It was so absurd that I really laughed. Another family member was trying to manipulate me into taking responsibility for Ethan and Bella's actions. What's different this time? I asked. Why don't you help them if you are so concerned about their financial situation? Your husband's law practice is doing well, and you have 3 rental properties. Why am I the only one expected to support them? That caught her off guard. I don't want to take sides, she said, but I pressed on. You are picking sides by coming to me and demanding I pay for their consequences instead of admitting the harm they caused. She then revealed what she thought was her trump card. Your father is considering retiring early because of stress. They might have to sell the house. Is that what you want? I replied. No, Karen. They're losing everything because of their decision to condone Ethan's actions. They, like Ethan and Bella, are facing the consequences of their choices. I am not responsible for fixing that. When you are older and alone, family is all you have, she warned. No, I countered. Self-respect is all we have in the end, and I am finally choosing to keep mine. After blocking her number, I hung up. Surprisingly, this gave me clarity. For the first time, I felt truly free from the obligation and guilt that had haunted me since childhood. Later that day, I accepted the job offer in Seattle. The change of scenery feels right, and the company is offering a significant promotion. I am starting anew and selling the condo. Yesterday, my coworkers threw me a farewell party. I learned what true support looks like from these individuals who stood by me during the darkest months of my life. One close colleague gave me a card signed by everyone, reminding me that my worth isn't determined by those who couldn't see it. I've discovered that family is about mutual support, respect, and trust, not just blood relations. The friends who supported me, the coworkers who protected me, and ultimately, myself, have proven to be my true family. I am done with my parents, Ethan, Bella, and now Karen. Their choices led them here, and they are responsible for the outcomes. I will not be their ATM or scapegoat any longer. As for my future, I am excited about my new life in Seattle. I am looking forward to the opportunities that await me at my company's renowned West Coast location. More importantly, I can't wait to build a life where I am respected for who I am, rather than being compared to someone else's golden child. Writing this last post from an empty condo surrounded by stacked boxes feels oddly fitting. I start my drive west tomorrow, looking back on my past life filled with pain and familiar strife. Yes, their baby was born last week, in case you were wondering. No, I haven't reached out or seen any pictures. I've closed that chapter of my life. Once again, I want to thank Reddit for supporting me throughout this journey. When I was filled with self-doubt, your encouragement and advice kept me going. Anyone going through a similar situation should know that their worth transcends how their family treats them. Walking away is sometimes the most self-loving thing you can do. It's time to go. Cheers to fresh starts.